Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of my live tea tasting. I've got a great blend for you guys today, so we're just going to go ahead and jump into it. We have it's a new blend, it's a new brand that I'm using. It's called Stephen Smith Tea Maker. I've looked at their catalog. This was actually part of a gift box that I received from a friend of mine and a friend of the community's, Miriam. She took the initiative and sent some tea, and I want to jump into this and review it. Hey, Sneha, welcome. I was intrigued because she made some really good choices. So we're going to start with the 2016 aged white peony. And this, if I'm not mistaken, is a Sheng pu'er, which is an uncooked pu'er. Usually they're aged and fermented. So I'm not sure. This is definitely aged. I'm not sure if it was fermented, but from the smell of it, it does have that kind of aged scent. It's kind of pungent, but since this is uncooked, it's not going to be very overt. Hey, Dark Phoenix, welcome. And you have subscribed on my Twitch for 13 months. Thanks for that. It's a continuous one, so I thoroughly appreciate that. So let's take a look at what the tea looks like. I'm going to pull out this one because this looks like a really beautiful example of a white tea. If you take a look at that, it's got a distinct white fuzz in it, and that's what you look for with a young bud. You're also going to see, now generally this is cut or plucked a little bit lower than this is what's called a heavy pluck. So you see over here you have when I speak about the 2 leaves and a bud, this is the bud, 1 leaf and 2 leaf. But you have a second one here. Hey Ma, welcome. So this is what's referred to as a heavy pluck. A heavy pluck is more than just the 2 leaves and a bud, which generally you would pluck right about here. Oops, I broke it. But that's not going to affect the taste at all because it's still relatively intact. But it looks like I just turned it into just a regular pluck. But yeah, so the difference in the color between the white and the green, the white is actually a fuzz that comes out of the bud itself. It's a young bud, so it hasn't bloomed yet. So the new growth is going to be under it, and that's where the new leaf comes from. So white peony is it's a white tea that's plucked young. This looks like a big tree, this looks big for a tea leaf. Yes and no. I mean, it depends on the pluck itself. Like I said, you're going to look for the 2 leaves and a bud. This is that exactly, but the way that it was plucked had a lot of stem underneath, and that's why it was connected to a second 2 leaf and a bud pair. So that's why I said it's kind of big, because they usually pluck it under the bud, but in this case they just pluck both. Which is, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a really good thing because it brings a stronger flavor. Now normally, so the way that it works is you have somebody who overlooks the plants and decides whether there's going to be, hey Teresa, welcome, whether there's going to be a heavy pluck, a light pluck, or a standard pluck. So that means that that is generally just a way of keeping the tea plants at a certain height. So when you have rows and rows of tea plants, you want to keep them at a general height so that you can always pluck from the top. Sometimes, especially after a winter, the leaves grow a little bit faster after the winter comes up because of all that stored energy. So you want to start the season with a heavy pluck just to keep the tea plants from keeping it about a standard size rather than overgrowing. So that's why we have a pluck like this. I just went off on a huge tangent. So this being aged, that's usually code for pu'er, and pu'ers are aged and fermented in the same process. Sometimes they ferment it physically, other times it's done in nature. So you have a really strong shu pu'er, which is fermented microbially. That means that it ferments in its own environment, so that when you pluck, it's already really pungent. Is there alcohol in the fermentation? No, there is not. It's just more of a pungent taste, a stronger taste, but it's not alcoholic. Usually, alcoholic, you need different kinds of herbs, different kinds of plants. You know, some people use hops, but it's it takes a certain plant to create the alcohol. This is not alcoholic at all. It just tastes fermented. For those of you who drink, you know what that tastes like. It's just like that kind of heavier, pungent flavor to it. But this is not alcoholic. That being said, I'm going to jump right into it. So we take a look at the color of this. It's beautiful, crystal clear. You can see right through it. I love the way that it looks. This is very indicative of a white tea. It's really light, barely colored. Like you can see, it's almost perfectly clear. But there's a certain golden tint to it that gives it a kind of very, very light yellow, sometimes a little pink, depending on the angle of the light. Like for instance, up here it looks a little bit pink, but down here it looks pale yellow. It's probably because it's going through and you see my skin underneath, like my collar. But sometimes it can have that naturally. So it all depends on the actual blend itself. Now I really love the scent of this. It's definitely fermented, because it's got like that very, very slight fermentation scent. It's kind of salty, kind of silky, and a little bit slightly metallic. And it's got like a vegetal, hefty vegetal to it. So, now that you saw what it looks like when it was dry, I'm going to show you what it looks like when after it's steeped. Ooh, this is a beautiful example. Oh, whoops, I just dropped it. All right, this is a beautiful example. Now it kinda, oh wow, it's falling apart. So you see, it maintains its 2-leaf and a bud fixture to it, and the camera is not going to show it. Maybe you can see it looks fuzzy. There's a little fuzz coming out of the bud, so that is indicative of the youth of it. Now, generally, there is. Usually people go to tea shops and they ask about the caffeine, and people say, hey, white teas are the least caffeinated and black teas are the most. This is generally untrue. Each blend and each tea is going to have its own set of caffeine, and the only way to really test it is to test the steep of it individually for each cup. But in general, people don't like to talk about this because it kind of screws up the momentum. But in general, white teas are slightly more caffeinated because the tea is young and it needs to reproduce. So, as a deterrent for bugs and for pests and all that, they produce more caffeine so that they'll either leave the bud completely alone and go away, or they'll just snack on the older leaves, which are more hardy and can take it. So generally a white tea it's more caffeinated than people generally think. But again, it may or may not have more caffeine than a black tea because each blend is different. So I'm saying that to say that if you ask a tea shop and they tell you that a white tea is lightly caffeinated, then they just throw it into a general pile. They're just blowing smoke up your behind, basically. So I'm gonna finally. It's been 10 minutes into the stream. I'm gonna finally take my first sip and see what this tastes like. Oh, nice. That is a really smooth. That is a really smooth blend. It's kind of silky. There's a slight saltiness to it, like a coppery kind of overall flavor. A little bit of salt, a little bit of vegetal, but it's really smooth. Like, it's not powerful at all. It's just slightly salty and slightly metallic. Uh-oh, there's a little bud in there. Got it. And it has like a kind of milkiness to it. It's got a not a heavy texture, but a noticeable texture. It kind of sits on your tongue, and it burns slowly, which means the taste lasts, and it kind of lingers a little bit. So there's a nice, little salty, little sweet to it. It's super smooth and super soft. I really like this. And it's a little bit heavier than a general white tea. Usually it takes a bit of practice to really get the nuances of a white tea. So if you're looking to see how that tastes, I would start with a flavored white tea and then work your way down. You said, you mean white tea is known for its soft taste. Doesn't fermentation destroy that? Not destroys it per se. It just adds a bit of intensity to it. It's kind of like that's like saying adding salt to potatoes is gonna destroy it. It doesn't really destroy it; just change the tastes. You know, basically makes it an oolong. No, that is completely false. An oolong is fermented, not aged. Not fermented, oxidized, not aged. And that's a completely different process. The way that uncooked pu'ers, like this one, work, is what they do is they pluck it and they lay it all out on a mat or a bamboo mat or whatever you're gonna lay it on, and you let it sit and wither in the sun for a few hours. Then once you get it to the essentially what you're gonna get is the dry leaf. Like, it's gonna be up to about 3% of hydration in it, where it comes crunchy, crispy. That's what they do, and then they put it somewhere to age. What they do with oolongs to oxidize it is they break the leaf, they expose the juices inside the leaf to oxygen, and that's the oxidation. That's part of the oxidation process. So they essentially beat the leaf up, and then they fire it to stop the oxidation process. Now, this can happen multiple times depending on what kind of oolong you're working with. So what they'll do is they'll either break it a little bit and then fry it, then break it a little bit, then fry it, then break it a little bit and fry it, and so on until you get the kind of oolong that you're looking for. Or that's generally for Taiwanese. For Chinese, what they do is they break it to a certain extent, kind of heavily, but not as heavily as they would black teas, and then they fire it and process it. So in this case, what they do is, this is not processed at all. It's just dried and packaged and aged. When you age a tea, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. Traditionally, what they would do is they would put it in either a rack and cover it up, or they would put it in a pot and cover it up, and put it in like a cave, someplace where it's away from humidity. But it's away from the dark, away from the humidity, the air. It's away from the air, and they just let it sit there for a few years. Now this one was aged since 2016, so that's, let me see, 6 years, if I'm doing my math correctly. Let me see, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 21. So it's about 6 years, depending on what month they did, which could make a difference. I mean, there's a difference between doing it like 6 years and 1 month versus 6 years and 9 months. Now, the pinnacle that you're shooting for any pu'er is 15 years. It peaks at 15 years, and then it gets the most rich flavor. After that, it's not gonna decrease, so to speak, but it's just not gonna get any better. So you're gonna want to do an aged pu'er for about 15 years, even 30 years. It's gonna still be good. I think I have one from like 2008, so it's approaching. Let me see, 2008. Yeah, it's approaching. I can't wait to break that one open, by the way, because that one is going to be like just incredible. Did I miss any messages? No, I did not. Okay. It didn't. My Facebook didn't come up yet. So that being said, this is still a semi-young pu'er. It's about aged half as much as you like it, but because it's not cooked, you're not going to. Yep, it is working. I see your test. Thanks so much. So since this is not cooked, it's not going to get much stronger than this, even after 15 years. It's going to stay relatively the same, just a little bit more, slightly more intense. Now this one was plucked, was it from Fujian, China? And the cultivar is Dabai. Was it the fun? Oh, was it from the? I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Fuding Dabai. That's FUDING DABAI. You're in another meeting, but you're listening to this too. Thank you for joining us, Miriam. This is dedicated to you because this is a really good pu'er. So you have good taste. Even though you probably just guessed at what I would like. I appreciate that. Ooh. That was nice. I kind of got like a melon sweetness on that last sip. It tasted kind of like watermelon. And that surprised me because I wasn't expecting that. And it's very rare that you get that kind of a flavor from just a straight up tea rather than a one that's been blended, one that has either flavors or actual fruits in it. So this one kind of caught me off guard. It has cooled down a little bit, so this is like it's a really good, it's a really pleasant surprise. So that being said, I'm going to try to find some more of that on the Thomas Taste. Ready? Here we go. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, I'm getting that. I'm getting that watermelon. Whew. I like it. I was not expecting that. It's sweeter than, hey, Joe, welcome. And thanks for the bits. I appreciate that. Ooh, that melon. Woof. No, it's not often that I get surprised to this extent. But that really enhanced the flavor. I was not expecting to get that sweet kind of flavor to it. It's just, woof. I need another one. Ooh, that's good. Oh yeah, I would highly recommend this one. Oh, thanks again. Oh no, wait, sorry, that's Dark Phoenix. I thought that was Joe again. I appreciate the bits. Thank you so much. Oh wow, yeah, that's really, really nice. And on top of that, because there's a slight texture to it, drinking the tea actually has a bit of a watermelon texture to it too. Very silky, very smooth. It's not as heavy as a regular watermelon. You know how when you eat it, it's kind of grainy. But this one just has the kind of the weight of the texture without having the graininess of it. So it's really, really smooth. It tastes like watermelon juice or watermelon drink rather than the watermelon itself. So this is actually quite a pleasant surprise. I was not expecting that. But I like it. Okay, questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, now's the time. I'm going to answer Teresa's question as I always do. What food would I pair this with? Given the sweetness of it, it's definitely going to pair well with a dessert. Kind of like a fruit salad, kind of like a something creamy. Oh, what was that stuff called? Ambrosia. Ambrosia with that nice sweet cream to it. Oh yeah, or a yogurt. I can totally see myself eating like that. Something else. Something I haven't brought up in a long time. And Shannon, if you're out there, you'd appreciate this. Stroopwafels. I have not talked about Stroopwafels in ages, and I'm kind of disappointed. I love Stroopwafels. I haven't had them, and this is me? Oh, me like. You like what, Dark Fifi? I assume it's the ambrosia or the Stroopwafels. Not sure. Oh, Stroopwafels. Yeah. It's something that I haven't brought up in a long time, and I used to bring it up because Stroopwafels go well with a lot of different teas. Given that this one is very light and airy, I would definitely pair it with that. And it'll really enhance the sweetness. Like the tea would enhance the sweetness of the Stroopwafel as it goes down because you have that melon kind of undertone to it. It's really nice. Ooh, that is really, really nice. Oh, okay. So, again, questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, now's the time. I do want to do a little bit of aftermath for the the Hot Ones challenge. For those of you who tuned in to Twitch, you got a little bit of extra. It wasn't as long as I was hoping because I made the mistake of having a heavier a heavier lunch than I should have. And it didn't last as long as I was hoping. Maybe I did about half an hour longer. But I would like to try again. This time, no lunch, just going straight into the hot sauces. We're going to do a full version of the Bits for Bites. So stay tuned on that. I'll probably have it set up maybe in January. But as I promised, I'm going to space it out. If I ever do it again, it's going to be spaced out because people are worried about me. I appreciate the sentiment. I'm not worried about myself, so I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy that way. But I promise that I'd at least space it out a month or two. So January, end of January, possibly early February, we'll see. I still have the hot sauces available, and I promised one of them would go to Miriam, so that would probably be the last one that I use before I pass it along. And trust me, it's a good one. It's one of my favorites on there. Now, other announcements. In a few weeks, I'm going to be having. I'm not gonna say why quite yet, because it's still kind of sort of up in the air. But I'm going to have a special. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. I'm gonna have a special stream coming up. I'm not going to say what it is, but for the latter part of December, I may or may not be streaming my live tea tastings. It's all a matter of what's going on. So that being said, I'm going to keep you guys on the edge of your seat. So we'll see. I'm hoping that things kind of work out that way. Fingers crossed. We'll see. But yeah, I'll keep you guys posted once the plans are set in stone. It's gonna be a big deal. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the on the group, in the Facebook group. So stay tuned. Again, questions, comments, if you have anything to talk about, now's the time. Yeah, I mean, you guys, you probably know, like, I wasn't on last week because we were having Thanksgiving with the family. I flew out to New York. And so it's been about 3 years since I've seen my family face to face. It was a really great experience. It was something that I didn't know I missed until I actually got there. So I hope that you guys all had a great Thanksgiving as well. And you did all your Black Friday shopping, because, you know, that's a thing for some reason. I'm not a big shopper, so it is what it is. So what does it smell like? I might have missed that portion. It smelled kind of metallic. It's kind of salty, silky, very, very smooth. Yeah, what else did I mean, it's not a huge, it's not a very strong scent. Generally, when the tea is aged, it gains a bit of a stronger scent. But because this was only done for about, how much did I say, 7 years, something like that. Because it wasn't aged that long, you're not going to get a very, very potent smell. Generally, there's a little bit of pungency for pu'ers that are aged. Ooh. Wow. This one, after it was steeped, I noticed there's a huge difference between this one and the dry. Yeah. That's interesting. The steeped one smells a lot sweeter. It's still vegetal, but it's a lot sweeter than the dry. And slightly, like, you can get a little bit more of the pungency out of the steeped rather than the dry, but that's because, like, the water brings out everything that was hidden. That is really pleasant. I would love to have this kind of a scented, maybe like a scented candle or an essential oil kind of a thing. It's really, really smooth, really sweet, semi-floral. Wow, I could really get into that. Now, keep in mind, this is a white tea, so I did steep it as such. It was what was it, 109, 108, 9, or 10 degrees for 3 minutes. And judging by the leaf, I could have probably done it either a little bit hotter or a little bit longer. But I think I pulled it out at the right time. So, like, no sense in, shoulda, woulda, coulda. In this sense, I think I did it. I did it fairly well, maybe perfect, I don't know, because white tea is easily oversteeped, so you don't want to mess around with it too much. It is okay to experiment, but since this is a pu'er and it's aged, I generally do not recommend. I don't recommend experimenting with pu'ers, just because of the higher quality that they are. It becomes a little bit of a waste. But definitely, this tastes good. I think I did right. I did right by it. Oh, that just keeps getting better and better. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. This has been an extremely wonderful experience. So I'll go ahead and post the link in the description. I'll also post the link of my Twitch in case anybody wants to check me out there. I want to start doing more things on Twitch. So we'll get there one day. Until next time, thanks so much for joining me. This has been an extremely wonderful experience. Have a great weekend, a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.